Parenting is hard, but this is easy. Listen to Stroller Coaster, hosted by Lynn Smith, a mom and former news anchor for NBC, and co-hosted by an improv comedian. And it's a place to be entertained and to laugh over crazy parenting moments and to learn something new. Stroller Coaster was voted Best Branded Podcast 2024 by Digiday, and Stroller Coaster is created by Munchkin, the most loved baby lifestyle brands in the world. I just got done listening to their transitions episode and I really resonated with it. And I just loved how they were talking about kids really needing to have that connection piece before we can expect them to follow directions or to transition easily or to get their shoes on, get out of the door, get in the car. I just felt so seen as a toddler mom. And this season, they're talking about things that we really all should be talking about, like how to stay connected with our kids once they're in daycare, how to hold on to your patience as a parent, why kids are so obsessed with snacking, and the hilarious but important process of making friends with other parents. So follow Stroller Coaster on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure you leave them a rating and review. Welcome to No One Told Us, the podcast that tells the truth about parenting and talks about all the stuff you wish you knew before having kids. I am your host, Rachael, and today I'm speaking with Allegra Gast, a functional registered dietitian and international board-certified lactation consultant who is passionate about helping families navigate both their postpartum health and their breastfeeding journeys. Allegra offers virtual consults for families all over the world, and she started her business, Aloha Nutrition, when she lived in Hawaii, but she currently resides in Texas with her military husband and 4 kids, including her newish baby twins. So Allegra, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So we've been connected just kind of through Instagram and through the baby sleep and lactation world for a long time. And we recently actually worked together a little bit more personally when I did my hair minerals test with you after suffering lots of hair loss post-COVID, and we will definitely get into that. I also would love to hear about how your nursing journey with your twins is going and how your postpartum recovery has been this time around. But first, I would love for listeners who are new to you to just kind of hear a little bit about your background and how you got into this type of work with families.
Yeah, thank you. So I started my career as a registered dietitian thinking I wanted to do sports nutrition, but I got my first job working at WIC, Women, Infant, and Children, which is a federally funded agency to provide food for women, infant, and children. And that's really where I found my passion, helping pregnant moms. But it wasn't until my postpartum journey where I realized there was this huge gap in postpartum nutrition, not a lot of information about the postpartum period. And I was like, wow, we need more help and more support. So I kind of shifted my business from that prenatal environment, that prenatal world, to more the postpartum. And so after working at WIC for several years, I went private practice. I became an IBCLC lactation consultant after seeing a lot of moms struggling with breastfeeding. And even through my first postpartum journey, my breastfeeding journey, my baby had a really bad tongue tie. I had cracked nipples, vasospasm, just, all the things. And it's like I knew about lactation, but it wasn't until you're actually doing it with your newborn that you're like, whoa, okay, there's this big learning curve. So I've been helping families for the past, I've been a dietitian for almost 10 years and a lactation consultant for about 7 years. And love what I do, love helping moms just feel better postpartum. I feel like a lot of times we get dismissed or, your symptoms are brushed off as, oh, it's normal. It's normal to feel tired all the time. But, food is fuel and we're nutrient depleted. Pregnancy and breastfeeding is very demanding on the body. And so just the more I've studied, the more I've helped postpartum families, the more I've come to realize that, we need to address our health and our nutrition. And it starts with us and then it trickles into our kids and the rest of our family.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one thing that is talked about a lot, especially in my line of work and on my page, is just how exhausted we are all the time, how hard it is to be, postpartum, caring for this baby who might not be sleeping very well at night. They're nursing throughout the night and throughout the day, and you're just really tapped out. So What can you tell us about, kind of like those normal levels of exhaustion that just come with being a new mom to an infant and, even to a toddler or older child? It's just a very demanding role. Mm-hmm. How do you know when it's maybe teetering on the edge of like not actually normal and this exhaustion is not how you should be feeling?
Yep. Yeah. So I think there's a big difference between sleepy, like, oh, my baby woke up frequently and I'm sleepy, and exhausted. And exhausted, if you're feeling like brain fog, constantly tired, where you just have no motivation to even do things that you like, can't take your kids to the park, enjoy them, you feel like you got hit by a bus, like that's usually when we need to see what's going on. How is your quality sleep? I have twins right now. We just hit the 4-month progression, and, I'm sleepy, but I still feel good. I still can function. Here I am on your podcast. I've got my business and I've got 4 kids. So there's a difference between that sleepiness and really supporting our body for that, good energy during the day. So starting the day with sunlight, getting a good breakfast. If you're not sleeping well, if you're waking up frequently, your body is going to crave that sugar for that quick energy. Whereas if you can start your day with a high protein breakfast, it keeps your blood sugar steady. It prevents those energy crashes. And so I'm a huge believer in food as fuel. And if we're tired, we need to make sure that we're looking at food and balanced meals with adequate protein, quality carbohydrates in the form of fruits and vegetables, starchy vegetables, whole grains, and then healthy fat. And then a big thing that we don't talk a lot about is electrolytes or minerals. Minerals are our body's spark plugs. So minerals are things like sodium, potassium, magnesium, iron, iodine, all these things are minerals. And we get very nutrient depleted during pregnancy and breastfeeding and postpartum. And when we're not replenishing these minerals, we're gonna feel sluggish and, we're not going to function optimally. So we really need to focus on these minerals, taking quality, supplements. If you do that, prenatal vitamins, organ meat, even just adding electrolytes. So I know like when we work together, I was like, we need to add more electrolytes, more sodium, potassium, magnesium. And that's been a game changer for my clients, even my followers on Instagram. They start adding electrolytes and they're like, wow, I actually feel energized. My milk supply has increased. I feel so much better. And just even that small little tweak can be really impactful in your life.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people realize, when they're breastfeeding, especially, like I used to get so thirsty all the time. Like I just could not get enough water and I was chugging water all day long and just peeing it out and like not realizing that wasn't actually hydrating me optimally. And then once I started using electrolytes in my water, it was like such a huge difference.
Yep. Yeah. Electrolytes helps transport that water you're drinking into the cells. So we're often told, chug tons of water if you want a good milk supply. But if you're not getting those electrolytes, you're just going to be peeing all day. Exactly. So we really need to make sure we're getting that and it's bringing it into the cells for optimal hydration.
And I think, as busy moms and moms who maybe are not getting enough sleep or, moms who don't have a lot of support, like, it feels like such a huge task for some reason to feed ourselves well. Like we put so much effort into how we feed our kids. And for some reason, we always come last. And this is something that I have had to really work on is like, I'm not going to just eat my kids' crust for breakfast, right? Like I'm not going to just eat the tops of the strawberries that nobody wants. I need to actually make myself a good meal so that I can be a good mom. What are some tricks and tips that you can give us? I have 2 questions. One is like, what would be considered kind of a perfect plate? So for someone who's not really very knowledgeable in nutrition, how do they know what enough food is? How do you know when it's enough? And how do you know what types of things to add to your plate? Like specifically for breakfast, because breakfast is so important.
Yeah. So I'm a huge proponent of eggs, but only one egg is actually only 6 grams of protein. And ideally we need about 20 to 30 grams of protein. That's usually what I recommend, what other health professionals recommend. So if you can have like maybe 2 to 3 eggs, I personally do 2 eggs, maybe scrambled eggs, and then I add about a 1/4 cup cottage cheese to the mix and just kind of blend it all together or mix it together. And then maybe a side of Dave Killer bread or just a bread that's higher in protein. And then maybe you do a scoop of collagen powder, which is an easy 15 grams of protein just right there. Add that into your tea and your coffee. Even sometimes smoothies, there's so many quality protein powders nowadays. So getting a quality protein powder and you just put that into your drink. Maybe you make a quick milkshake. I mean, sometimes I'll make something for my kids in the blender, and then after I pour it out, I'll add my scoop of protein powder and then just quickly blend that up and drink it as I'm getting them ready for the day or whatever. Some other quick ideas are frozen waffles, like Kodiak pancakes. Kodiak waffles, theirs is higher in protein. So you can buy the frozen version that you just quickly pop into the toaster. I personally just buy the actual powder and will even add a little bit more protein powder to that. You could top that off with some Greek yogurt. Another thing that I think a lot of people just forget about is dinner food. Dinner food is totally fine for breakfast.
Yeah,
There's been times, I've done like leftover sweet potatoes with maybe a little bit of chicken or maybe a hard-boiled egg with some home fries, just even leftovers is fine.
Yeah, I actually hate breakfast food for the most part, so I do that a lot. I'm more of a savory breakfast person. I just don't like breakfast food. So that's a really good tip too.
I was going to say with my first baby, before I really implemented a lot of the nutritional changes, is I ate cereal, and that is just a sugar crash. So I was like, I'm being healthy and buying whole grain cereal. I'm using almond milk, and there's hardly any protein in that breakfast, maybe 5 grams of fats, and I would be hungry within an hour. So you had asked in your question, how do you know if you're eating enough? How much breakfast to have. If you're hungry within an hour, even 2 hours afterwards, then you didn't eat enough. You either didn't eat enough or you didn't get enough protein. So your meals, even with breastfeeding, should take you about 3 to 4 hours. So and I'm breastfeeding twins, and I would say around the 3-hour mark, I'm like, all right, I need lunch or a mid-morning snack. So if you find that you're constantly hungry, then you're not getting enough protein or not eating enough.
Okay, that's a really good tip to know. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I do want to ask you for some other quick tips for prepping these things for when you have a crazy busy morning. You have to get to work, you have to get to daycare, all that stuff. We'll be right back.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.
Lynn, this time of year, parenting can be such a flusterclux.
You've come to the right place. I'm Lynn Lyons, and I've been treating anxious families for over 30 years.
I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host Robin Hudson.
Join us for Flusterclux, a podcast for parents who worry.
Wait, that's everybody.
Yeah, these last few years have felt like one long anxiety attack for so many.
Why do you think parents are always surprised that a podcast about anxiety relates to them, even if no one in their house has an anxiety disorder?
Well, worry is human. Everyone does it. And anxiety shows up when we face uncertainty.
All the parenting tips you've taught me have been essential.
I love to break it down into skills we need to manage worry in our families.
We've covered so many topics: depression, burnout, meltdowns, perfectionism.
Don't forget scary mothers-in-law.
Right, but of course that's not my mother-in-law.
Because that's my mother.
And a listener.
As a psychotherapist, I like to teach parents and kids how to respond to everyday moments in healthy ways.
Managing anxiety really can be taught.
It really can. And I'll even tell you what to say.
We talk about serious stuff, but without being too serious.
Anxiety wants everything serious. Anxiety doesn't stand a chance when we're laughing, even about the tough stuff.
So Allegra, I think everybody kind of knows that they should eat healthier, that they should be eating, more nutrient dense foods, more protein, all of that. It does feel really hard though to fit it in when, we're rushing to get to work or to daycare or to school in the morning. Even parents who have a new baby and they're staying home, like it just still feels like such a task to actually cook a from scratch breakfast. And you just mentioned some great alternatives like frozen Kodiak waffles and things like that that can make things a little easier. What other meal prep tips or what other things do you do you have 4 kids, so I imagine you have to do a lot of prep to actually make this happen. So what are some of your favorite tricks for that?
Yeah, so I would recommend finding a time during your day that you are a little more energized, you have a little more time in your day where you can batch make meals. Maybe you have your toddler help you. I love having my toddler help. I mean, when we first started off, it was stressful because he would spill things, but he's 3 years old now and loves to help me in the kitchen and he cracks eggs. But one thing that we do is make a bunch of waffles or even pancakes, and then we just freeze it. And then during the week, we'll make that. Another thing is like overnight oats. So if you wanted to prep several mason jars or even chia seed pudding, and just make a whole bunch of those, maybe like 4 or 5. And then you don't necessarily have to put in the milk right away. Maybe you do that the night before, but at least you have your dry ingredients ready to go. And so then you can just pour the milk in, your choice milk the night before, and then it's ready to go in the morning. When I worked my 9 to 5, I would do that a lot. Sometimes I would just eat that on my car ride. And I know it's not always recommended to eat on the drive, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. So I would just eat my overnight oats on the road. Protein smoothies, you can also prep those ahead of time. Sometimes I'll just get a whole bunch of different frozen fruits and put it in a baggie, and then even add the protein powder. I mean, it's okay if it's frozen. And then the morning of, I just put it in the blender, add my liquid to it. So I think a lot of it is just being intentional. So it's a priority for me. I feel better. I'm a better mom. I have more patience. I think sometimes we think mom rage happens just because we're always a mom, but I really believe that it's because we're hangry in a way. We're overstimulated. So, and if our blood sugar is all over the place because we're not eating enough, we're not eating consistently, that's a huge stressor on the body that really affects our nervous system. And so, we're overstimulated, we're tired, our kids are having big emotions, big feelings, and how can we help them co-regulate when we're not regulated? And that starts with us and our nutrition and having balanced blood sugar. So for me, it's a priority. I will wake up 15 minutes before the kids just to start breakfast, even if I'm tired, or maybe I make dinners in the morning, maybe early afternoon. Usually everyone in the family is a little more happier than come dinner time when everyone's hangry, and then you have decision fatigue and you're like, I don't know what to make for dinner. Let's just do takeout. But a big thing for me with my twins, they had really bad witching hour, and from 5 to 9 p.m. they were just miserable. And so I started cooking dinner in the morning, or even doing a crock pot meal. So even if you're working a 9 to 5 job and you've got kids, you're dropping them off to daycare, maybe you do a crock pot meal. So you could prep it the night before, and then in the morning you just turn it on, and then you come home from work and you've got a well-balanced, healthy dinner ready to go.
Yeah, because we've been talking about breakfast, but I know a lot of parents struggle more with the dinner time because their kids are clingy, whiny. We're rushing to get everything done. We want to get to the bedtime routine. Dinner just feels like an impossible task to make from scratch. So I love the idea of the crock pot. We also have an instant pot, which makes a lot of things really quickly. You just turn it on and it takes 15 minutes to make the meal. So you can look up a lot of those types of recipes too. And then also like I work from home, obviously. So sometimes, if I'm already chopping up stuff for lunch boxes, like I'll just keep my cutting board and knife out and I'll chop up ingredients for dinner for that night or the next night. Carving out whenever you can, like you don't have to make the whole meal from start to finish when you get home from work. You can have things throughout your day that you do to make it possible. And I also love doubling recipes. So if I'm already going through the trouble of making something, I'm going to double it or I'm going to triple it and I'm going to freeze some and have it just ready to go for the next time. I just have zero time.
Yeah. I mean, I really only make dinners maybe 3-4 times a week at that. But when I do make dinners, I double, triple, sometimes quadruple batches and I freeze it. So, a lot of meals are perfectly fine frozen. One big thing I would recommend investing in is a deep freezer. And, we see these parents with deep freezers of breast milk, but, with their oversupply, they're building a huge stash. But I'm more proud of my deep freezer for all my frozen meals.
Yes.
And it can make, just pulling out, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to have for dinner, or I don't feel like making dinner. I mean, let's be honest, do we really all like making dinner every night? So sometimes I'll just pull out a casserole that I've made or a soup or stew or something like that. I think a big part of the decision fatigue too is we think that we have to have some like elaborate meal like enchiladas or lasagna or, something fancy, but it could really just be chicken, rice, and broccoli.
If we have like a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store and I make a side of rice in our rice cooker and like, boil or roast some broccoli, like they're perfectly happy and it took me zero time.
Also, don't discredit frozen vegetables. They are so easy. You just pop them in the microwave. Like we do edamame as a snack a lot. I might maybe munch on that as I'm making dinner too, or heating up dinner, just pop it in the microwave. As long as there's not all these additional ingredients in there. You can buy a bag of frozen broccoli, like literally the only ingredient is broccoli. Just pop it in the microwave. So, I rely on frozen vegetables all the time. So my rule of thumb is if you're going to cook it, you might as well use frozen. It just cuts back your time in the kitchen.
And the prices, like we buy almost all frozen berries. I mean, we buy when it's seasonal, we buy fresh too, but we always have tons of frozen berries and my kids love eating them like on top of yogurt or something like that or in smoothies. And you get so much more for your money with that too. So
yes.
So you also mentioned breastfeeding because you're an IBCLC, obviously, and you're currently breastfeeding twins, which is absolutely amazing. So when we come back, I would love to chat a little bit more about breastfeeding specifically and just, things to keep in mind with that. So we'll be right back.
Hey friends, if you're facing divorce, thinking about it, or navigating the chaos it can bring, I've got something just for you. I'm Kate Anthony, and I host the New York Times recommended The Divorce Survival Guide podcast, your one-stop resource for surviving and thriving through divorce. Each week, we dive into everything from emotional healing and co-parenting to legal strategies and starting over. You'll hear from top experts, powerful guest stories, and maybe a little tough love along the way. Because divorce, it's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. This isn't just about getting through it. It's about rebuilding and reclaiming your life on the other side. Whether you're in the middle of a messy split or planning your next chapter, I've got your back. So hit that follow button and join me on the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, because survival isn't the end, it's just the beginning.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.
Hi there, I'm Andrea Owen, self-help author with 19 translations of my books, global keynote speaker, and life coach. My podcast, Make Some Noise, has been serving up self-help in a simple-to-digest way for the last decade. The topics brought in each episode are practical and easy to implement around topics such as working through fears that keep you stuck, different modalities of therapy, managing your negative self-talk, and more. We bring you guest experts, solo episodes, and I even coach listeners on the air around relatable struggles. I also do my best to weave my sense of humor into some heavy topics because, let's face it, life can be pretty hard, and it's so much better when we can have some fun while walking through our challenges. Whether you're seasoned in personal development or just starting out, Make Some Noise podcast will help you become the best version of yourself, the person you're proud of when you look in the mirror and show up in your life. Simply search Make Some Noise with Andrea Owen wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Hey, moms, parents, and mental health advocates. Are you ready to dive into the real, raw, and incredibly important world of perinatal mental health? Look no further. The Mom and Mind podcast has that and more. Hosted by me, Dr. Kat, a perinatal psychologist, mom, and passionate advocate for mental wellness during parenthood. Every week, I explore the emotional journeys of pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. From postpartum depression and anxiety to birth trauma, miscarriage, and the challenges of balancing it all. Mom and Mind brings you the conversations we need to be having. Through expert interviews, personal stories, and actionable insights, you'll find a space of understanding, hope, and healing. Because no one should feel alone in their journey. Whether you're a mom, partner, friend, or professional, Mom and Mind is here to empower you with knowledge, compassion, and support. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts and join a growing community breaking the stigma around perinatal mental health. Listen in to Mom and Mind, because your mental health matters.
So we're back with Allegra, and first I would love to just kind of hear how it's going with nursing twins, because I think it's just, that's so amazing. And so many people think it's not possible.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's been a journey. What I recommend, with twins is first breastfeeding each of them separately at the beginning. So every baby is different. Even if they're twins, they're going to have their own sucking mechanism. They might have an inefficient latch. So really spending time working on each of them separately can be really helpful. I think a big issue or a big concern with twins is a lot of them are preemies. Mm-hmm. And so, they're in the hospital or the NICU. Parents need to be exclusively pumping because they can't latch baby. So thankfully that wasn't the case with us. I did carry my twins to 39 weeks and 4 days. And that just felt like forever. You're pretty uncomfortable towards the end. But they were full term. They were 7 pounds, 8 ounces and 6 pounds, 3 ounces. So they were, good sized babies to latch onto the breast. And right. So we didn't have a whole lot of barriers at the beginning. Now they're just distracted. They have teeth. They want to bite. I did have one bout of mastitis. So, kind of navigating that. But I think also just having the experience beforehand and then just having that support. I really needed my husband's support and he was there. Thankfully, he had 3 months of paternity leave. So he was really able to help out. Sometimes if I would tandem feed, I would latch one baby on, but then the second baby, I just wish we had 3 arms, 4 arms as parents. But sometimes he would hold one baby while I would latch the second baby. Or there were even times where I would hold both babies and he would just put my boob in the baby's mouth. So it really was team effort. Wow, but now they're 6 months and they're great. They've actually had a little more of bottle refusal, which is kind of a stressor in itself. So breastfeeding now is going really well, but I would say a big part is just having that support. There were times when even myself, I know everything, but I still doubted my milk supply just because babies are more fussy but you have to remind yourself Are you hearing swallows? Are they gaining weight? Are they having good output? Wet and poopy diapers. Breastfeeding is so hard because you can't see how much you're making. So you really have to trust your body and trust your baby. So that can be some barriers, but I would definitely recommend working with an IBCLC lactation consultant because, even me, like I want to be their mom. I didn't want to be the professional. So I would reach out to some of my lactation friends and just like get a second opinion. Like, hey, does this seem right? Is this normal? Because, as moms, we want to be there for our baby too, not just the professional.
That's a really, really good tip. Are there things when you're breastfeeding that you should be avoiding or making sure you're getting extra of as far as nutrition?
Yeah. So we know so much about milk supply for dairy cows. There's a lot of research in the dairy industry and not a lot for humans. And we see that in the dairy industry, they really focus on their nutrition. They focus on increasing the cow's caloric intake. They actually give them mineral sticks to help with their health and their postpartum. And unfortunately, we're not told that postpartum, but it has a huge impact on humans. So definitely making sure you're eating enough because it does require more calories to breastfeed. And unfortunately, we don't know, like there's not research on the breakdown of the macronutrients. So we're told we need an extra 500 calories. Is that from protein? Is that from fat? Is that from carbohydrates? So unfortunately, we just don't have enough research. As a dietitian and being in this field and working with families, I know we need to increase our protein. So I recommend at least 100 to 120 grams or more per day. And then definitely getting those minerals, incorporating electrolytes. So I recommend, and I have a free mineral mocktail you can put in the show notes too. Okay. But incorporating mineral mocktails is basically just a mixture of those electrolytes, adding that to your water. I've had clients notice an increase in their milk supply just because minerals are foundational for our hormones, and we need our hormones, prolactin, oxytocin. They're responsible for breastfeeding. Our thyroid is very important as well. So making sure that we're getting those minerals to support our hormones, which then impacts milk supply and, how we're feeling. And then, our nutrition is so important too for preventing postpartum depression. And we see a huge rise in that. And while postpartum depression and mental mood disorders are multifaceted, there's so many things that go into that. Nutrition is a big part of that. And there's actually research supporting that. So vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, selenium, even iron, there's so many things that we can do with our nutrition to help that. I mean, of course, we need more support and more leave, paternity leave, maternity leave. Right. So there's definitely a lot, but nutrition has a huge role in that.
Yeah. Nutrition is like one of the things that we can kind of control, right? Like there's so much of our society and our systems that we cannot control that make it really hard on postpartum parents, but nutrition, we do have a little bit more say in how we fuel ourselves and how we feed ourselves. So it's kind of empowering. So let's talk more about minerals now, because we've been talking about it a little bit, but I really want to hear about how exactly minerals work to support us. Because, so we started talking about this a few months ago because I was sharing about how I had COVID, had it really, really bad. And it was my first time with it. A few months later, I noticed like massive hair shedding. My daughter was already, she was like already over 1.5 by that point. Like I had already gone through the postpartum hair shedding that happens, to pretty much everybody in the 4th trimester, or, shortly after that. And I had already been growing it back and it was falling out worse than it ever had before. And I was like, something is very, very wrong. And you actually suggested that I get a minerals test done, a hair minerals test. So can you talk a little bit about that process and what those test results might show for someone? So a hair mineral test is a form of assessing your minerals. So a lot of minerals are extracellular, which means they're outside the cell. And a lot of times doctors will do just a blood
sample of blood work to see your mineral status. However, that's not always accurate because our blood tries to stay at homeostasis, which just means like balance. It always tries to stay, in that balance. So it'll take minerals from our tissue into the blood to maintain that homeostasis. So if we're doing only blood samples, it's not always a good indicator of those extracellular minerals. So specifically sodium, magnesium, even calcium. We want to assess our tissue or our hair to best measure our mineral status. So, I think blood work is obviously very important, but it's not the full picture, and it doesn't tell us all the other minerals outside of the blood. So a hair mineral test, which is what we did with you, you cut a sample of your hair. So it was about a heaping teaspoon worth from hair closest to the scalp. And we use the lab trace elements, and it looks at your mineral status over the course of 2 to 3 months. And so it really gives you a good snapshot of overall how your minerals are doing. And I think you were pretty depleted, right?
Yeah, I was.
If I remember correctly.
Yep.
And one thing that you had mentioned in your intake form, and I think you had even mentioned it on your Instagram, was like your iron was low, but based off the hair mineral test, we actually saw like your copper and the other minerals that support iron were also low. And sometimes, minerals don't just work in isolation, they work together. And so if your iron is low, why is it low? Is it something else? Is it copper, vitamin A? Because those things help with iron recycling. So we want to get the whole picture. And that's really what we do in my practice with functional nutrition, is really looking at your body as a whole instead of just that one particular snapshot. And I think that's kind of what conventional medicine misses, is like, if you have the symptoms, let's refer you to endocrinologist. Okay, then let's refer you to the gastroenterologist, and then refer you to a different doctor. Whereas like your body works as a whole. We want to get the whole picture.
Right.
So,
well, and like you said, like the blood work is great. Like I definitely did all of the necessary blood work to make sure that I was, my thyroid was okay and all of that stuff too. But my blood results showed that I was low in iron. So they were just going to put me on an iron pill. And then once I did the hair minerals test with you, you were like, oh, well, maybe we should actually be supporting these other minerals to then support your iron, because just increasing the iron isn't necessarily getting to the root of the issue.
Yeah. And a lot of us are actually eating enough iron. Iron is fortified in our food. If you're eating meat, most likely you're getting enough iron. So oftentimes if we're seeing low iron, we want to see what the other minerals are like, what their level is like.
Well, you have so many great resources over on your page. You do hair mineral tests for people. You have a free minerals guide, which is really helpful. So if anyone's interested in this stuff, definitely be sure to follow Allegra at aloha.nutrition, and we'll put all of that stuff in the show notes too. But the last question I have for you is actually not about nutrition, but it's about parenting, because you're a mom of 4, so I'm sure you have lots of wisdom for us. What is something that no one told you, or you feel like just was not talked about enough before you became a parent, that you wish you knew?
I think just how demanding it is, how you really need to show up for kids. And I think just no one really told me how demanding it was, but also like how important it is to start with you and to fill your cup up. So I always look at parenting as like a big sports game. And I played a lot of sports in high school and college, and you wouldn't show up to a sports game underfueled. You make sure that you eat, you take your electrolytes. So every day I kind of think like, okay, it's go time. Let's make sure I start with breakfast. Let's make sure I'm drinking. If I'm getting irritated at my kids and, they're having these tantrums or big emotions, I try to take a couple deep breaths, try to regulate yourself. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But really even just trying to do the best you can. I think there's so much pressure. There's so many demanding things in our day to day, especially as moms. I know you have an episode on like the overload of motherhood. There's so much, and I feel like people don't tell you about everything, all those things. And so I think your podcast is amazing. It's been an amazing resource, even to myself, the different speakers you have. Just no one really told me how demanding it was.
Yeah. And even if they had told you, you probably wouldn't get it, right? Like it's something you just can't possibly understand until you're in it too. So Well, Allegra, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us. This is such a helpful episode. I hope that everyone listening will go make themselves a huge plate of food now and a nice electrolyte drink. I hope that they'll follow along with you too, because you also share a lot of tips on your Instagram and just like your own mom life, which is always so refreshing to see. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Hey, moms, parents, and mental health advocates. Are you ready to dive into the real, raw, and incredibly important world of perinatal mental health? Look no further. The Mom and Mind podcast has that and more. Hosted by me, Dr. Kat, a perinatal psychologist, mom, and passionate advocate for mental wellness during parenthood. Every week, I explore the emotional journeys of pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. From postpartum depression and anxiety to birth trauma, miscarriage, and the challenges of balancing it all. Mom and Mind brings you the conversations we need to be having. Through expert interviews, personal stories, and actionable insights, you'll find a space of understanding, hope, and healing. Because no one should feel alone in their journey. Whether you're a mom, partner, friend, or professional, Mom and Mind is here to empower you with knowledge, compassion, and support. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts and join a growing community breaking the stigma around perinatal mental health. Listen in to Mom and Mind, because your mental health matters.